Życzymy Państwu przyjemnej podróży.
Dzień dobry, witam na panelu.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the panel Cultural Policy. I have a great honor to run this 1-hour meeting. We've got a parity this time. I would like to introduce my guest, spokesperson Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska, Minister for Culture and National Heritage Hanna Wróblewska, Vice Director of Mickiewicz Institute Olga Brzezińska, and a round of applause to the Director of the National Film Center in which Rafał Syska. From Friday, I've been to watch. I attended many panels. I feel a bit stressed. We are going to talk about culture. There were panels about music, books, films, and in each panel, there was a lot of complaining. So after these 2 days of listening to culture offers, recipients of culture, I would like to speak with you, starting by saying who is not supported or what is not supported by the cultural policy. There are different opinions, so I would like to hear your subjective views to integrate our panel with the last 2 days of the Games. Since all the panels covered the topic of culture, indirectly maybe sometimes, it's great. It shows that everyone has realized that you need culture to do everything. Nothing will change without culture. Culture is most important because it defines our life in different fields. And it's great that people were talking about it. It's great that people were complaining because it means that there are expectations, dreams, ideas. People underline some problems. There are problems, we know. But the most important thing, well, I have to use political language. After 8 years, everybody knows that culture must be free. Money is very important. Without money, it is hard to do culture. Cultural works will be provided, but to make sure that they are of top quality, you need money, but freedom is also necessary. So after the 8 years, we know that the funding allocated for culture must be divided in a transparent way. In the previous years, there was a lot of money. The budget was quite big. But the recipients of culture, creators of culture, didn't notice the money. It was wasted. So there is a lot to talk about. What we should do to make sure that we, as the recipients of culture, we should receive an interesting and accessible offer to use the outcomes of the artist's work. And of course, artists, they are doing passion, but they still need to make their living. And the country has to oversee it. If somebody says that the free market support is sufficient, then you probably don't know which continent you live on, because in Europe you need several sources of funding for culture. In Poland, we are missing one thing. We have central government's money, local government's money, so there is this poor opportunity for the private capital to be invested in culture. Of course, somebody can have passion for culture, maybe somebody is snobbish, but it is hard to make sure that they invest culture. Well, I would like to start with positive aspects, then I'll be talking about negative ones. So within the past few months, I have visited many cities. I meet with people, I talk with them. I always participated in culture. Now I take part in it 3 times more, and I'm very happy because I can see great things are happening. We've got wonderful cultural assets, and there are so many people with passion for culture. So I'm proud and happy, satisfied. What we haven't managed to secure: security of artists, the creators of culture, people who work for the present and for the future. And for example, I want to say that so many artists are still not included in the public security system. They are not secured in terms of visiting a physician. If they need to see a doctor, they really have to be a very crafty artist. Female artists have no right to pregnancy leave. They have no rights to obtain sickness allowance. So it's a shame. We live from the artists' work. They create our presence, they build our tradition, they place mirrors in front of our eyes. So we have to complete the work on the law to provide security for artists. This work started in 2018, so there was a strike by the artists. That was the time when all the galleries, almost all the galleries, all the museums in Poland were closed because artists went on strike. So the legislative work included many phases. The provisions were consulted with different experts. Now we hear that this will be an act on the status of the artist, that there will be an office that will determine who is an artist and who is not. Tomorrow we will have a press briefing during which we will be describing a project that has just been prepared and soon will undergo legislative process. The project is to involve professional artists in the system of social insurance. This will be an act for payments to include artists in the social security system, to make sure that they have no problems if they become sick, to secure their pensions, to be entitled for maternity or paternity payments. So there are great hopes. Hopefully, this act will undergo the legislative process and the law will enter into force next year. So there was a lot of negligence since 1990s. You have mentioned a day without culture, but pandemic. This is when we realized that we were so lonely, so helpless, because we couldn't go to museums, theaters, and even libraries. So that was the time. Even those who underestimated the role of culture, they could appreciate how important artists are. Okay, I will give a tricky answer. What is not secured by the culture? One, it doesn't secure one narrative from the perspective of Adam Mickiewicz Institute. This is of key importance. I started to be the director in May this year, and we are starting to build a colorful and multi-plot story. And we feel that we have an open space for this.
Ministra.
What the minister said, this is a source of huge satisfaction and joy that the door in our institute is not closing. We've opened windows and we let many ideas in, and we have people who bring their ideas and they are very willing to work with us. So there is this crowd of people who want to make this story with us. So it shows how interesting and interesting Polish culture is. Rafał, the floor is yours. You have a very specific specialization, so it's probably easier for you. If I'm going to be optimistic, but also be realistic, I'm speaking with my friends who live in other countries, neighboring countries. And to a great extent, one narrative is duplicated, envy. In Poland, I refer to the cinematography. We've got a very good system to co-fund filmmaking. Film is a very costly art. It's hard to imagine that only free market will be able to fund cinematography. We have very smart and diversified system to fund projects, public or quasi-public projects. We've got this National Film Institute that can use calls for proposals, projects to provide funding for films. We can also provide funding using the funds of the Ministry of Culture through the institutions like National Filmoteca. We have a system of funding using the system of incentives. It's most automated system because this economic criterion is the key criterion to provide funding to a project. So no arbitrary mechanisms are used. So the system is well designed, although the recent years showed that it's quite easy. No legislation is, no amendments of the law are necessary to make the system political. We could see how specific persons received funding, how specific persons were assuming highest positions. So despite the diversification, everything was done at the same desk. So the tendency was, the intention was to use the system, abuse it. So if I were going to talk about risk we have to face, and we know that this risk is one of the key risks. So it's definitely the risk of a very strong influence on the Polish cinematography by overseas corporations. This risk is dangerous because there are two fundamental monopolies that can come to Poland and they can seduce us, which is a risky road. It's financial monopoly. It's easy to obtain funding without any applications. Money is provided almost automatically. Streaming platforms can have access to this funding. Then there's the monopoly of easy distribution. We know that film production is difficult, but it's distribution of the film is even more expensive. So making money on film distribution is harder. So there are some streaming platforms as Netflix can seduce us, seduce the film industry. and the fast distribution of the movies can be made possible. A very important aim and one of the main intentions of the government is that there is this function of the regulator. The function will allow to secure the interest of the industry, to protect our market, prevent the entry of the huge monopolies that on the one hand can be helpful, but in long-term perspective, they can threaten security of our branch. As a historian, I would like to mention 1920s, 100 years ago, an ultra-liberal system. And then so Hollywood came to Poland to popularize American movies. Then the Polish film makers and distributors decided to be together, and then some internal modern regulations were adopted to secure the interest of the Polish film industry. If we do not support our internal local film production, this universal standardized model of production proposed by the media corporations will become a real threat. I will be the devil's advocate. Can Poland afford to secure all the fields of culture? That's why I started with the question, because we've got film industry and streaming, which use private money, but we also have art. We've got theater, dance, books. During the panel on books, Hanna was telling us about the situation of the publishers. She was saying that the better situation is in film industry. Then somebody told her, actually, film industry people said that book industry is in a better situation. So this is a classical form of the field. So can we afford to support financially all these cultural fields? Isn't it that the cake is already too big, and where the attention of the recipients is, of the audiences is, maybe this is where money should go? What would you like to give up? It would be very hard for me to choose. If we reject one element from this puzzle, it won't be possible to arrange the puzzle. You mentioned the example of films. People start watching films at home. They do not go to the cinema. The way of reaching film audiences is different. It's important that apart from the productions mentioned by the director, we should also have this type of films that shapes our imagination. We need to support films that are art. The state should invest in these areas that carry artistic ambitions. I don't want to say that all of a sudden we stop providing support to books, to theater, ballet. All these arts are integrated. I cannot imagine that we should say tonight that something is out of the state's interest, and the state will stop supporting it. I would like to say that the modern culture recipient audience, very often the culture is managed by algorithms. Well, this is what we aspire to obtain. We do not want it to be governed by algorithms. If we follow only algorithms, we will not need culture. People will stop thinking independently. So we'll have to do our best to reach the youngest audiences. to ensure that they have the need for independent thinking, not just accepting materials which are provided easily.
Wpływ na zarządzanie
You speak to us as the people who manage culture. It's like a wake-up call. The culture's changing. So on the one hand, we use these old divisions and we stick to it, talking about the State Institute of Cinema Art, Institute of Book, just to notice these sectors. But we need to be aware that the world has become intermedia and intertextual. The state should be aware of all these sectors and can invest in some more than in other, just like the computer game sector, which requires different regulations and different money than, for instance, publishing or literature. It's not always about the money. Money is important, but very often it's about the law. It's a matter of regulation. I mentioned artists. These are the clients who create the ecosystem. We are like the ministry, like concrete pouring ministry, but we need to accept different points of views. Investing in new buildings, successive investments and walls, we need to understand that walls are not sufficient. They will only make us find the money for heating, energy, rather than for culture. So I wouldn't like to withdraw the state from any domain, but I would carefully consider investing in the ecosystem from the clients and creators' point of view. So I would like to refer to the new culture users, offline and online. Culture changes its definition. I don't want to discuss which film is better than another. That's the worst path we could enter. Very interesting. I like it a lot. But I would like to say that I feel my interests have not been supported for the last 8 years. But I am just wondering where the key to culture lies to satisfy the non-sophisticated taste of millions of viewers, but also to maintain interest. We've got lots of institutes and various organizations, so I am wondering what the key is going to be, in addition to the fact that it's worth investing in people. So the state must not withdraw from high culture, even if these are things that appeal to limited groups. They are socially so important that they build us all. Well, that's the risk. Who is going to decide about it? Because it's not for the Minister of Culture. It should be in the hand of the experts and the viewers. Coming back to the first question, what we failed to do, I would say we still failed to build a social culture management system. It is always based on some rules and specific people. It is based on the organizer, meaning the president or the appointed person, and directors of the institutions. No matter what councils we appoint, these two hands have the power to decide. Perhaps we should invent a system which will be in between the director and the organizer and working to the benefit of the client user and allowing some impact. I know it's a challenge. We used to work in various institutions, and we know what a challenge it is to work with the program board. However, it is all about the director's goodwill. This is how the system works. If we created a more pro-social system of managing the culture, it would be a real change for us all. It will be a response to your question, not requiring the state withdrawing from culture. The presence of private business could also help in new formulas of social management, and culture could do better. I would like to add that from our perspective, it looks better. The Adam Mickiewicz Institute operates worldwide. We do not need to limit ourselves. So if we think that the strict division is a thing of the past, we take a more extensive approach. There is no point to withdraw from the cooperation with creators or promoting the Polish culture. Quite to the contrary, we expanded. There are new fields entering, and we are looking for our consumers, both online and offline. Context matters for us. We do not bring rope when you need nails, and we always try to investigate how what we present outside Polish border resonates. And we always find it, but it's about context, relationships, and how it echoes, how it resonates. Moreover, we want to ensure the quality we want to deliver. Referring to what Rafał said, we know the function of a patron. That's a good word, but in the Polish culture, it doesn't look like that. There is plenty of will to invest in something, but finally, many institutions operate based on state institutions. What should the relationship be like? What should be the triangle like in order to make it transparent, good for institutions, and the best for culture consumers, as they're the ones who should get the best offer with what is happening in the Polish culture? It's definitely so that we're in continental Europe. As you rightly pointed out, in continental Europe, the model of culture financing and management rests on the public shoulders of local governments or state government. The truth is that the presence of private business is not sufficient, but it is also about reconstructing the system and the finance, meaning being responsible for an area where where culture institutions are located should be greater. Then the quality can be higher. So the reconstruction of the management system and the presence of private business in managing culture institutions does not necessarily mean commercialization, but responsibility and being a part of the local ecosystem where the business, consumers, and culture employees are strongly located at the same plane. We've got what is left behind the Law and Justice. It has been consolidated, and we don't know what is going to happen in the future, but it shows how easily you can get the money from the state treasury and control it. That's not a solution for cooperation between business and public institutions. So the reconstruction should take place, as otherwise private business won't enter culture to that extent we expect. In cinema, we've got entities doing well, which are strong in the European circulation, at least in which we've got three of them. Ewa Puszczyńska, Opus Film. Yes, but they need money from different sources. Most likely, the synergy of state, local government, private and public funds is a prerequisite for making films. You mentioned the private money and business investing in culture. These are two approaches. One in which someone invests their private money in culture and commercially hoping on ROI. But it's also important to encourage business to risk and invest in creative activities, theaters and museums, which are not commercial. They do not need to bring money, but certain encouragement is necessary. I've been talking about it for a long time. We need to create a system like the one we have in sports. You can invest your company's money or your money and have a benefit of a tax write-off. This is a win-win situation, but we still lack it. Everybody is aware that we need to complement the system of gaining funds for culture, and we still do not have it. I feel that when you asked this question, you partly answered it because you used the word transparent. I would like to refer to the independence of culture and creators, and it's often a dream to build independence. Where to do it? I might be wrong, but in my opinion, only through diversification of sources. You said the system has to be transparent, so everybody needs to know who gave the money and based on what rules, that nobody buys anything. We need to get rid of some illusions that the state will withdraw and then sponsors will come and pay for everything. At the beginning of the 1990s, that was the idea to save Polish cinematography. We had to force some fines because no sponsors were interested. The institutions and the business will be more willing to invest in some culture institutions. I appeal to myself and to some organizers that business and sponsors will come to stronger institutions, but it will not substitute us. Institutions have defined their missions. And support them in this mission. I would like to give the floor to our audience. On the one hand, we need to protect our heritage and build the culture for the future. What are our achievements? So I would like to, what do we need to promote Polish culture abroad? So what do we need to build? We need to build a story, to tell a story. People won't be interested by nothing else than a story. There's no time to delve into the topic whether the recent years were used well, what were the failures, what were the mistakes. And we obtained an opportunity to build a new story. So we should capture it in different parts of the world, and that's why we need a story. We also need to be in a relationship. We need to come back to building deep relationships with artists, as they are the salt of our work. Without them, we won't be able to build a narrative. Without them, nobody will be willing to listen to it otherwise. So we take a closer look at what's happening, how our creators work, and it's simply about our priorities for the next 2 or 3 years. In your opinion, what are the opportunities? You ask about geographical directions, design, music, film. Let me start with geography. I feel we are facing a unique opportunity for Poland to become a living and resonating center in our region. We must not only think about national culture, but also what is happening in the region, how the palimpsest we are can be shown, and how it can resonate from the place of cooperation and penetration of various heritages, artists, and creators. That's one thing. We also need to analyze the directions we have not considered previously. Arab countries and Asia are promising, and they are interested in our culture. As far as domains are concerned, we are looking for non-obvious combinations, observing the dialogue between performance, theater, dance. Sometimes it's hard to determine whether it's one field or an interdisciplinary creation. We want to focus on design, which is our power. When it comes to export of Polish culture products worldwide, design is ranked at the top. So we will appreciate design and work and craftsmanship. There is one more component of this international cooperation and promotion. We live in the times when art has gone digital and does not require representation of an institution. We've got creators who can use great technologies previously used only by professionals, and in the computer-generated space supported by AI, and all these technologies that we have been using so far, they can create works communicating with other consumers without our representation, I mean, institution of culture. And in communication with them, they enter various dialogues, receive and send the messages. So the international relationship in the space of modern technology has been revolutionized.
I would like to add about the promotion of Polish culture throughout the world. I'm not worried. I have no concerns. Different countries are interested in the Polish culture. To me, the problem is to promote culture in Poland. This is the problem. I do not quite know how to cope with, how to reach with the information to our recipients about film, about theater. Polish film is shown for a week in Polish cinemas. So, how to disseminate the information that the Polish film is worth watching within this 1 week's time? Would people just have this information, receive the information? I've heard that this is a great film, but then the film is no longer shown in the cinema. Exhibition, concerts, well, they are taking place, but there isn't sufficient information. I'm not worried about foreign countries and Polish culture, but we have to find a good idea how to disseminate the Polish culture in Poland. Public media and local press. Let's get back to what Olga has said, or the director. We are talking about relations, communication. So we are listing these words, but we have to remember that these things are very important. We have to be certain that the art, the culture we've got is very good. So we have to be fully aware that we have a lot to offer, but the problem of the dialogue is that we also have to listen to the audiences to find out what they want. And something else that is very important, we should stop burning cash to attract attention to Polish culture. We have to be positive that we are good with our culture. And this is how we negotiate with the rest of the world. I would like to relate to the empty cinemas. 13.5 million Poles live in poverty, and the biggest cultural service is the service about film and film series. So the information reaches the audiences, but there is the problem how to attract people who have no money to go to the cinema. Yes, this information reaches a small number of people. Only one television is interested in cultural programs. Books are not presented and promoted on the telly. There isn't enough information on the theaters either. Yeah, it should be the task for the public media. The other side of the coin is that sometimes Polish people cannot afford to buy a book, and the role of the institutions of culture is to make sure that the cultural institutions, libraries keep operating. Libraries often become institutions of culture. They provide access to e-books. It's very important. We have some programs in our ministry. There will be one program that will be announced at the end of this month. So you will be able to see how much funding was spent for the centers of culture. This is one of the biggest steps, financial steps. Small cinemas should be also more accessible, and actually Polish series and Polish films are very popular. Well, this is the question time now. 3 people want to ask questions, so we have almost 10 minutes for this session. Ania Karpowicz, good evening. I have a question. I represent the social institution of culture of Warsaw. It's probably the only music institution without a director. It's managed by a creative group composed of 5 people. And if in future we had the dream to make sure that our institution should be co-run by the city or by the ministry, we are illegal entity. And we are talking about the trust and about democratization. If we listen to the debates on abuses, for example, in the theaters or classical music movements, there was this call for testimonies that was launched to invite people to inform about the cases of violence. So if when we are talking about abuses, then we always have directors. Does the ministry work on a solution that would allow such collective management bodies to be legal? Maybe it's not the issue of funding. It's an issue of new tools that could be developed that would provide transparency, and the artists will feel safer. And there are also some bottom-up initiatives. There is also music cooperative. There are theater groups and groups dealing with other visual arts. So these bottom-up structures are using different principles. It's not about having one director, and we notice that it works better, it operates better. Thank you for this question. I do value this movement in Warsaw. It's great that Warsaw decided to have these 3 institutions of culture in a completely new form. So I wouldn't like to unify it. I wouldn't like it to be co-managed by the city or by the state, by the ministry. This bottom-up nature is very important. If you are asking me whether you are drafting some legislation, well, yes, we've heard about such proposals. However, there is certain difficulty. It's difficult to imagine that there will be the directors' tandems. We are trying to introduce it. So when there are competitions held, we are inviting such candidates. But there are special laws, like the law on finance. I was saying about it before. Director is fully accountable and solely accountable. So the change should be introduced, but this change is not only for culture. It concerns also other sectors. The partner for the ministries is, for example, foundations or associations. We do not have to have the director. Well, but we have to make sure that there is appropriate accounting section. So we hear about these issues. I wouldn't like to co-manage such institutions of culture. I would rather think how to transfer funding and how to, you were talking about this, taking the best practices from them. We have to be realistic. It's not that this mutual love and being good will be everywhere, and it will be the same as with the National Theatre or National Museum. Of course, still there will be a hierarchy system, and it is necessary to help this, to support this hierarchy. We will be using maybe councils, boards that will be able to influence the operations of the directors. Maybe we need some mechanisms. We are talking about problems of mobbing or abuses. Introduction of such mechanisms in these non-hierarchical institutions would allow employees to be beyond these hierarchies that very often generate such problems. I have a question on opening of MSN. It's the question to Madam Minister. The leverage, well, in the Draghi's report context, when he was writing about the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, that was the leverage for innovation. So we are talking about the increase of innovation achieved through MSN. And the second question concerning levies on artists. Well, maybe they should be treated as entrepreneurs, and we should teach artists how to commercialize the results of their work. We should treat the contributions. MSN question. It's a self-governing institution of culture that operates under the city of Warsaw. So it will be soon open. MSN will soon be open. It will be the completion of specific phase and the beginning of the next one. I believe that both in terms of urban development, architectural solutions, it will change the center of Warsaw. And this change will stimulate further changes to other parts of the center of Warsaw. I do not want to teach artists how to be entrepreneurial. I don't think that any office should teach artists how to be entrepreneurial. Artists operate based on different rules than the rules used by entrepreneurs. The system we want to propose, on the one hand, will be fair, adapted for artists. However, it will not lead to some losses to other system used by entrepreneurs. If an artist wants to become a businessman, and if he or she wants to have the specific accounting, wants to be a businessman, wants to have a full-time job, pay for social insurance, no problem. We are proposing something to these artists who still create art, who work as artists, but still are not insured. Thank you very much. Dominika Kasprowicz from Kraków. I would like to get back to the previous the topic of alternative models of management in the institution of culture. We have some solutions in the law, but practically they turn to be quite effective. So this model where the director will not be responsible for management, I mean, here the foundation or associations, it's done under the public procurement law, but we should analyze these solutions and we should look at the public-private partnerships. So maybe this will be an alternative path in the center, which will provide, on the one hand, control and transparency of organizers, and it does not require to construct further bodies, additional bodies like trustees or advisory bodies, because in this sector, in NGO sector, they produce these bottom-up initiatives, and if they are effective, they can be evaluated on the call for proposals procedure. I know such structures. I know such examples when they failed. So I'd be grateful if you could provide me with some positive examples, because we have a model of good introduction. I have an example of an institution project. Well, it had to be, actually the debts had to be paid for. But maybe you have some good examples. I do not know. I will be happy to learn about them. It was the last question, because I can see that our time is up. So we now have to say goodbye. Thanks for listening, for your questions, for engagement. I would like to say goodbye to our guest, Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska, Olga Brzezińska, the director of the Adam Mickiewicz Institute, Hanna, Wróblewska, and Rafał Syska, the director of the National Center of Film in Łódź. I would like to add something I forgot. Of course, we are in Łódź. We are very close to Has Street. I wanted to say that the year 2025 probably will be dedicated to Has, and hopefully it will be the time about this very interesting story about Has and in his position in the Polish culture. This is a real news. Thank you.
Jedzą kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarzy telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Przygotowanie ofiar dla pedofilów.
Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.
Uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it. And how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ausreise.
Polskie Radio.
1.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 000 osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Zapraszamy do Trójki. Od nowa.
Trójka. Program Trzeci Polskiego Radia.
Czy wytrzymasz klockowe tortury? Ze stoickim spokojem. Czy w twardych negocjacjach zachowasz zimną krew? Czy poddasz się dobrowolnej eksmisji ze swojego łóżka? Brawo! Test na obecność serca zaliczony. To znaczy, że ty też możesz być rodzicem zastępczym. Dowiedz się jak na testserca.pl.